when people use financial terms, that means they're thinking that is an important metric, as opposed to the words which I use, which have a good heart. When you meet someone or you interview someone, you're getting just a fraction of their entire selves. And the second, you're getting a snapshot. So two things are going to happen. You're going to learn more about them as you go, and they're going to learn more about themselves and change as well. So basically, it's not about, setting things up for success at the beginning. It's adapting as you go, as that person discovers their true passion, their real strength, their dynamic with their team members, the things which they're curious about. And I think that's the secret, which is not trusting that initial interaction or that starting point, the origin point, has got almost nothing to do with the journey that follows.
But you have to still make a value judgment on someone, like if you're trying to hire them for your team with like relatively very little information. And so what's the important information that we need to have?
Yeah, that's fascinating. For me, it's a question of values alignment. And that's difficult because values are difficult to measure and they're usually not transparent either. So one judges on things which are, a shared sense of humor or, a common perspective on topics one can actually discuss. But I think underlying that is, do we see the world in a similar way? Do we have shared values? And I suppose one could make that explicit, but it's typically not a process one goes through. In my case, my business partners were friends. And so it was a little bit different, but that can be, risky as well in a different dimension because we'd never worked together before. So I think it's difficult to have it all. One makes the best judgment one can with the information at the beginning, but then that gets updated so quickly in the course of the journey.
If you were to try and make the process that is previously implicit,
Yes.
quite feelings based,
Yeah.
do I feel like we're value aligned? You're trying to make that process more explicit.
Yes.
What does that look like?
The expression I use is to see if a person has a good heart. I've never done this before, so I'm going to have to make this up on the fly, but I would ask them about how they see themselves creating impact in the future. What difference would they like to make to their environment? What would they like to be known for, their legacy? And I think one would get a sense for both the perspectives which they have, as well as how much they've thought about it. Because unless they've been tipped off to prepare for the interview, those are not the kind of interview questions you typically get.
I'm trying to think about if I was to hire, let's say, a first employee, and their motivations were actually, I want to be filthy rich and become a quote unquote famous, successful entrepreneur.
Right.
And maybe that didn't align with my values. If I asked them, what sort of impact do you want to make in the world?
Yes.
I doubt they'd say, build a unicorn and sell it quickly. They'd probably say, whatever the space that I was in, i.e. connecting people, I want to help the world better connect. How do I uncover those maybe less desirable traits?
That's interesting because I think that the context makes a difference as well. So if it's an interview, it's going to be prepared to a certain extent and there's going to be a certain amount of falsehood. No one is going to be absolutely candid about their faults and weaknesses. So I think it's about reading between the lines, having conversations which are informal, using more of intuition in terms of what fundamentally motivates a person. I'll give you an example. So when people use financial terms, if they say unicorn, for instance, that means they're thinking that is an important metric, as opposed to the words which I use, which have a good heart, which is fundamentally non-business speak, almost impossible to measure, and a non-standard metric. So you can start judging from vocabulary rather than asking a question where the question signals the right answer as well.
Because you can't really filter your language.
Exactly.
Especially in this sort of interview.
Exactly, yeah.